Welcome to Land of the Bible. I'm your host, David Sussman. Today, we unravel the story of the Crusaders in the land of Israel. The Crusades, a series of religious wars that swept across Europe and the Middle East, left an indelible mark on the Holy Land. For centuries, they captured the imagination and the fears of people on every side. The story of the Crusaders began in Europe, where a call to arms was issued, framed as a sacred mission to reclaim the holy sites for Christianity. Thousands of men and women left their homes, their lands, and their families, driven by faith and ambition, or the hope of wealth and glory. Their destination was the Holy Land, a land steeped in spiritual significance for Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. The Crusaders' goals were both religious and political. At its heart was the belief that they were on a holy mission to secure access to sacred sites and to protect Christian pilgrims. European knights saw the Levant as both a spiritual prize and an opportunity to extend their influence. Arriving in a land of harsh terrain and complex political realities, the Crusaders had to adapt their military strategies. They built fortifications, strongholds, and defensive networks to control key routes, secure supply lines, and defend against opposing forces. The Crusader period left a complex and lasting impact on the local population. Christian communities were bolstered by the Crusader presence, gaining new structures for worship and administration. Yet, the Crusader campaigns also brought violence and instability, affecting Jewish communities who faced persecution, forced migration, and attacks amidst the political and military upheaval. In this episode, we'll explore the world of the Crusaders, their faith, their battles, and their enduring legacy they left in the Holy Land. Join me as we uncover the story of Europe meeting the Levant, of knights and castles, and a time when faith and power collided.
I'm Paul, and welcome back to the Land of the Bible. Today, we're going to be exploring this ancient coastal city, the final stand of the Crusaders in the Holy Land. This is a deeper story than just knights and castles and following the steps of Jesus. This is a history of a group of nations of people coming as one to fight for the same cause, to free the Holy Land. Right here on these shores is where the Crusaders landed. Many people, if not everybody, has heard of the Crusades. But where did they come from? When did they come? And why did they come? For that, we have to travel back in time all the way to France, to Clermont in the year 1095. November to be exact. And here we have the Council of Clermont with Pope Urban II. He has received an urgent call from his counterpart in the East. Christians are being persecuted. Sites are being desecrated, including sites in Jerusalem, the holy city itself. He gathers everybody together for this council, and there are hundreds of congressmen and bishops and abbots and clergy there to listen to what is probably the best sales pitch in the entire Middle Ages. At this time, most of the people were either illiterate, living in poverty, very simple farm folks, probably not landowners at all. So for them, the idea of going to the Holy Land had brought about this romanticized spiritual idea to save Jerusalem. And in droves, people started heading out. And it took them a few years and many different crusades. However, by 1099, in July, the Crusaders had reached Jerusalem. When the Crusaders finally reached the walls of Jerusalem, who did they meet? The Seljuk Turks. Now let's not get confused between the Ottoman Turks, who ruled the entire region as an empire 500 years later. We're still in 1099 here. The Seljuks had taken over in 1071. They were one of the shortest reigns of the Muslim leaders in this early Muslim period. And it was them that the Crusaders defeated by the Third Crusade. With Richard the Lionheart, it finally managed to take Jerusalem and reconquer the city for Christians. This was the beginning of centuries of pilgrimage to the holy sites of Jerusalem. This left pilgrims open to finally revisit Jerusalem for the first time in centuries, and it will continue the pilgrimage for centuries to come. When people talk about the Crusade, they'll often talk about the romanticized version of the Crusades, something that you might have seen in Hollywood, you know, the Kingdom of Heaven, and no, that's not what the Crusades were. The Crusades were actually a very bloody, very violent process. From Europe to the Holy Land, the entire way was paved with blood. And especially when they got to Jerusalem, the massacre of the Muslims and the Jewish community that resided within the city and all throughout the land, well, let's just say it wasn't a pretty picture, folks. When you read about the history of this place, you understand that the streets were literally paved in blood all through Jerusalem and the entire Holy Land. So for whatever conquest they did, there was a very heavy price that was paid.
Imagine walking where Jesus walked, where faith comes to life. Feel the Bible story unfold around you, from the green Galilee to Jerusalem's ancient streets. Experience the serene and welcoming land of the Bible, where miracles happen. Put your heart where His footsteps are. Visit Israel.
There are many different groups of Crusaders. They're called orders. There were two major ones that I wanted to touch on. Those were the Templar Knights and the Hospitaller Knights. You may have heard of other ones like the Teutonic Knights, but I'm not going to go into anything else yet. I want to talk just about these two because they were the major ones. The Templar Knights themselves got their name because they were situated on the Temple Mount where Herod had built his temple. Same place that the first temple was built. Same wall that the Jews still pray on today, the Western Wall. Same wall still stands. Of course, then you have the Hospitaller Knights. These were the people who took upon themselves to protect the pilgrims, their route back and forward from Europe to the Holy Land, their routes within the Holy Land, providing hospital care for the sick, for the injured, food for the poor, shelter for the weary. This is where their name came from. And it's these two orders that are the main responsible people for building these huge castles that we see scattered around the country today. And especially this one in Akko, the main refectory where 1,000 people could sit and communally eat together. Now that the Crusaders had conquered Jerusalem, the main reason for them to come here in the first place, they established 4 major states within the Levant: in Antioch, in Tripoli, in Edessa, and of course, the Kingdom of Jerusalem itself, where Godfrey de Bouillon made himself king. A big question to ask about the Crusader period is, were they colonials? Were they a colony? And the answer is absolutely they were. They brought Europe to the East, to the Middle East. They lived in segregated sections, they brought in a feudal system, their own laws, their own government, and they relied completely on supplies from the West. If the Crusaders hadn't been receiving supplies, they would never have survived here for as long as they did. Now that they've got 4 states, they hold the city of Jerusalem, they hold on to the entire Levant area, they started to construct, build fortresses, castles, routes, pilgrim routes, mail routes. They even had a banking system that you could bank money in London and withdraw it in Akko. But we look around at where they built and we see the expansion of their foothold. All of these places that were built either on trade routes, pilgrim routes, or border towns to protect the country's borders. We can really see amazing examples of the Crusaders digging in, they're concreting their foothold with the massive structures and castles they built throughout the country. From Belmont in the Jordan Valley, overlooking the entire Jordan Valley, to Montfort, to Belvoir, to Suba in Chemed, and even in Svat. All of these particular fortresses and the citadels and the castles were all built on special places. Whether they were protecting the mountain ranges of the north in Svat, or the pilgrim route in Suba, or even in Chemed as they came from Jaffa on the road up into Jerusalem. We see remains of Crusader ruins. This is where they built to protect the pilgrims, to protect the trade routes, and to protect the borders themselves. And they still stand 1,000 years later. Bringing with them the mindset and architecture styles of Europe, they built grand fortresses and castles all over the country. We know this. But what was even more spectacular was the fact that these castles and citadels and fortresses sprawled around the country were almost impenetrable. They brought that mentality with them because nobody had seen anything like that in this country pretty much since the days of Herod and the Roman. We still see these walls, many of them standing today throughout the country, to show us how they thought they were going to be here forever and how they built to last. The Crusaders were unique in the way that they were spiritually inspired. Let's not forget that these fortresses that we're looking at a model of right here in front of us were huge. They were impenetrable, but they weren't just buildings and castles and fortresses, they were also religious structures, because don't forget, the whole point of the Crusades themselves was a religiously inspired mission. And within these buildings, and eventually within the entire city of Akko, they would build multitudes of churches for all the different denominations, for everybody to come and pray and be part of the city of Akko and part of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And most importantly, what made it special is the people that built it. The Crusaders themselves, who were given special status, not just as fighters, but now also as monks and warriors. As Akko is located so far north in the country, and most of the Crusades came by land across what is today Turkey, down from Lebanon into the coast, Akko was one of the very first places conquered by the Crusaders. Therefore, they had more time to really build on the fortifications of this natural bay, this natural fortification of Akko. You see behind me the walls. Look at the fact that these walls, many of them are standing for centuries, showing us how important it is. And the fact that it's just a sheer cliff face type of a wall, right into the ocean, with no sand or any barge or anything to really get close to the walls. It made it a perfect defensive system for any sort of naval attack. And that would last for centuries until the British came along. I did it! Hey, check it out. I won. I got the bullseye. This is just one of many medieval games that the modern city of Akko has brought back to show us and give us a great feel of the medieval town of Akko. You see, this hall is massive, and within it today, we have other games like this, stores. Look at the pillars. They've done their best to preserve it. The experience that we get in Akko is just a little taste of what life was like. You see, the last period of Akko was a thriving history. The part that I'm talking about soon will be Akko with the Italians, the Venetians, the French, the culture, the music, and of course, the commerce. Because let's not forget, Akko was a port city, and at this period of time, in the 11th and 12th century, it was the most important city in the entire region. Akko itself is a history that goes back thousands of years. Right now, though, we just want to concentrate on the Crusader part of it. This few hundred years of Crusaders, and that is from 1099 right up until 1291. Standing here in the middle of the courtyard in Akko, we can see and feel the magnificence of the building. Behind me, you see these arches. These are typical Crusader arches called Gothic-style arches. The Crusaders gave us this type of architecture, which is a mixture of kind of an arabesque and a Roman architecture, and they brought it to the Holy Land, and for the first time ever, we see it here in the 11th and 12th century. Today, the city of Akko is continually building and developing for new projects, new tourist sites, and preserving and opening old sites for new tourism. Even the stage that I'm standing on, but don't worry, I won't sing for you. The seating behind me has been built because the courtyard that we saw is used every summer for concerts and shows. It became so popular that they took the time to invest the seating behind me, and even accessible for disabled people. I highly recommend, if you come visit in summer, come and see a show in this awesome stadium. Here's a little tidbit about the Crusaders you probably didn't know. They brought with them sugar cane. You see, the land of milk and honey before the Crusaders had no sugar. They didn't know what it was. Sweetness came from the dates, silan, or from honey, from the bees, but not sugar. It came in from Europe. So with the bringing in of sugar cane, it brought in a whole new industry to the entire Levant region. Right behind me, we have proof of this. This is just one of the many, many artifacts they found. And what we see is the cone they used to dehydrate and to drain out the sugar cane to eventually get left with the crystals, which of course, as we know today, is what we're looking for. And that's what was used for cooking and drinking and baking and whatever else sugar was used for. I'm walking now in what was in the day a street outside, and you can't see that because it's all covered now with everything built on top of it. But in the last almost 100 years of Akko's existence as a Crusader city, this was the heyday. Crusaders in the last 100 years made Akko into a thriving trade city, a port city, a city of culture, and you had people coming from all over Europe to be here. it became such an amazing place to be. Trade from all over the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe. People speaking different languages. Minorities such as Jews and Muslims were finally allowed to live and practice their religion freely. I'm now walking through one of the tunnels underneath the city. This was built by the Templar and the Hospitaller Knights. And what they built these tunnels for was not for sewage or drainage or anything like that. This was like a postern gate. It was an escape tunnel. They even thought about what they would do if they had to make a quick escape and how they could safely get out of the city that was completely walled or surrounded with armies in the land, ocean in the west. How do they get out? This tunnel was one of those escape routes. It's really cool that you can still walk through here today. Bring your kids, have a laugh, enjoy it, and pretend that you are one of the Crusaders protecting the Holy Land.
I will bless those who bless you, God promised Abraham. Embrace this covenant by connecting with the people of Israel. From Jerusalem's stones to Galilee's shores, experience living faith through their traditions and hospitality. Your journey is more than visiting biblical sites. It's about hearts that welcome your friendship. Your presence matters. Discover Israel.
Before the Crusaders, the Christian perspective of the Holy Land was distant and spiritualized. No one really knew what was going on here. After the Crusaders, everything changed. You see, even though there was a lot of violence, the Crusaders brought a different physical look at the land. And what that was forcing Western Christianity to re-engage physically with the land of Israel and the Holy Land itself. The Crusaders' legacy continued for centuries, even though they were only here for less than 2 centuries. They standardized and regulated and protected pilgrim routes, many of which are still being used today. They also provided the country with a landscape full of castles, churches, and fortresses, many of which are plotted throughout the entire country, from the very north in the Galil to the very south near the Dead Sea. Their legacy physically remains here to remind us of what the Crusaders brought to Israel and why it's important to remember who they were and why the Jews have come home. In 1291, the Mamelukes succeeded in breaking through the walls of Akko. This was the Hospitallers, the Templars, the Crusaders. It was their last stand. They lost this battle terribly, and they were kicked out of the country. And in less than 200 years, the Crusaders had come, conquered, built, destroyed, and they were kicked out. What remains is a significant lesson for the future generations. And it was from here that we learn that a nation that was built by the sword will die by the sword. And it's another sign that no other nation can rule over the land of Israel, because the covenant is with the Jewish people. And the Crusaders being kicked out is just another example of how you cannot take what is not yours. While the Crusaders built monuments to past glories, the Jewish people on their return have built a country and a future for their children. Here you see living, breathing proof of the prophecy of Isaiah in verse 35. It says that the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. And every single day we see that again and again in the modern state of Israel. The story of the Crusaders is a story of flawed faith, human ambition, and a kingdom that could not stand. But this is the story that we must tell. You see, it throws the truth of our time into a sharp, distinct relief. We're no longer living in the age of Crusader kings. We are living in the age of prophecy fulfilled. We are witnessing the hand of God fulfill prophecy. The Jewish people's return to our land, and it is our call as people of faith not to conquer, but to comfort and to support. And the best way that you can support Israel is now to finally come on back and visit the country, tour and support the people and the nation of God.
A small group of families set out on a journey that would change history forever. They were the forefathers. We journeyed to the very beginnings of a people, a story of faith, promise, and the land that would become Israel. Their story is a journey of discovery and survival, from arid deserts to flowing rivers, from humble tents to the foundations of settlements. They shaped the land, and the land shaped them in return. The covenant that bound them to the land, the values that they passed to their children, and the roots of a people whose story continues to inspire millions across the world today. Thank you for watching. Make sure to join us next time as we connect you to the people, places, and lands of the Bible.